I'm canning corn today. Why would you bother canning corn when it's so easy to buy at the grocery store? Well, when I started canning, my goal was to can as many of the items that I would usually buy out of a store-bought can and make them homemade and preserve them in what I feel is a healthier way. As you can see, most of the prep work was already done. I have removed them from the cob, washed them well first. Well, wait, let's back up a minute. I removed the husks, washed them well, and remove them from the cob. I have about here 2.5 dozen ears of corn all prepared, but I did keep 3 just so I can show you my favorite ways of removing them from the cob. Through the years, I've tried different devices and gotten rid of most of them because most of them don't really work too well. I had one that you'd put around and kind of push down, and I could not get that one to work at all. So up until very recently, my favorite tool was actually this. It comes with a case on top, and it's like it's a serrated blade that's on this. It handles well, you can hold it really well. So this used to be my favorite tool, and it still works really well. I did about half of them with this one, and I'll show you. But very recently, my husband came home with these knives. It looks like just like a regular serrated knife, but oh my gosh, do these things cut. These are so sharp and cut so well that I've actually bought like silicone finger protectors to put over my fingers because I'm so afraid to cut myself, but my gosh, do they work really well. So I'm gonna show you both, and you can decide for yourself. What I did when I did the bigger batch of it is I put a bowl in the bottom of this pot, and so it would bring and then I'd put the corn on top of the bowl, and I just went down the corn, and that way all the corn fell directly into my big pot. But I'm going to show you on a plate so you can really see. And drink my coffee as we go. I often do a lot of my prep work in advance. I did this yesterday, most of the corn, and as well I've got another project that I'm doing today, my vegetable soup, since I've got so many fresh garden products, potatoes and carrots and turnips, and so I'm also going to be making a batch of soup. So it's quite a big canning day today, and to reduce the amount of work that I had to do today, what I did yesterday is I prepped all my corn, and I also prepped all my vegetables for my vegetable soup. If you've never seen how I make my vegetable soup, check that video out. Click on that link up above, and you'll see everything about my vegetable soup that I make. I love having soup on hand. It's so convenient, especially when you can make it with your fresh summer ingredients, but do not despair. If you don't have your fresh summer ingredients anymore, I make these batches of soup a couple times a year, and it's not always with the fresh garden vegetables. But anyway, so let me show you how I remove the corn. When removing the corn from the cob, you don't want to take the very first top kernels. You want to leave those there, and you just work your way down. So I take this tool and I kind of dig it in a little bit to start it going, and it just runs so smooth along the edge of the corn. You got to try to stay away from getting too close to the cob. You don't want to get the hard cob in there. And I like this, but I find that I can control the depth even better with my knife that is really sharp, and it just works so well. It is recommended to use corn that's a little immature, where the grains aren't too big. I just use the corn that I end up with. The one thing that can happen when you're canning corn, and don't be alarmed if this happens, is that your corn may turn a little kind of discolored, a little almost like a grayish tinge in your bottle. Don't worry about it. Your corn is still good. It's just the processing of the corn in that way just does that at times, but you still have a really good and safe product if you've pressure canned it. And if you're unfamiliar with pressure canning, be sure to check out my video on pressure canning as well. There's 2 different ways that you can prepare your corn. The first way that you can do is what's called the hot pack method. So what you need to do is you need to measure your corn. For every 4 cups of corn that you have, you add 1 cup of water. Once you're done and you've done all that measuring and added your water, then you're going to heat your corn and bring it to a boil and leave it boil for about 5 minutes. I don't do the hot pack, I do the raw pack. I just remove it from the cob and put it straight in my bottles. I usually don't do these extra steps of hot packing unless it's absolutely necessary. Another thing that I want to point out, I've got all my jars warm and my caps warm and my canner is heating like usual. You want everything to be nice and warm unless the recipe says otherwise. One thing that I still do is I still heat my caps, and I know lately I've been seeing a lot of videos out there or people talking about how they no longer have to heat their caps. It's really great, and I am not disagreeing with what they're saying. The one thing that I did do though is I went on the company that I purchased my caps from, just to go and check out to see, the latest. I wanted to do the research before I stop warming my caps. I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. So I always recommend that if you're questioning certain things like that, to go check out what the manufacturer is saying. And when I did go online and I looked at this company, they're still recommending to warm the caps. So whether you need to warm them or not, I don't think it's that big of an issue. For sure it saves steps, and I'm all about saving steps. But for now, the company that I use still says to warm the caps, so I'm still warming my caps. Now don't boil them, just keep them warm until you're ready to use them if you want to do it that way. So now all we have to do is to put our corn inside the jars. So apparently when I was going through the clips of my video, I realized that I probably didn't hit record when I was putting the corn inside the jars. So I'm just going to give you a quick recap on how to actually put the corn in your jars when it comes to that time. So this is the corn that I have canned already, and it's all done. So you want to place your corn inside your jar, leaving your 1-inch headspace. You don't want to pack your corn down really tight. You just want to put it in, fill your jar. You're going to put your kosher salt, your sea salt, about half a teaspoon in your 500 milliliter jar. If you're doing quart-sized jars, so the 1 liter jars, you can put 1 teaspoon of salt. After that, you're just going to fill your jar, leaving the 1-inch headspace with your hot water. Make sure to remove your air bubbles inside of your jar by running a plastic device through your jar. Once that's done, you're going to take a cloth with just regular water. You're going to clean the rims of your jars. You don't want any food or anything to prevent your caps from sealing. You're going to place your cap on top of your jar and close it fingertip tight, and then transfer your jars over to your pot. So that, in a nutshell, is what I lost in my video filming. So I ended up with 14 jars of corn. That's why when I'm canning, I always make sure that I have plenty of jars clean, waiting just in case, because I'm never really good at estimating how much I'm going to get. Usually I'm pretty on the mark, but I mean, when it comes to something like corn, you can get large ears of corn, small ears of corn. Like, you can look in the books and it can tell you approximately how much you'll get, but you never really know. So I ended up with 14. What did I say at first? Maybe 7 or 8. But anyway, 14 is great. I'll have that much more. So we're pressure canning this. So as usual, you're going to get your pressure canner, make sure everything's working, make sure all the openings are nice and clear. We've got all our jars in there. I've got 2 rows of jars. I've got 9 on the bottom and 4 on the top. I have 13 jars. 9 on the bottom and 4 on the top. So I have 13 jars of corn, not 14. We're going to now seal our pot and turn up the heat. So we need to bring this up to pressure. So me at sea level, I need to get this, well, with the dial, I know I need to get it to 11 pounds of pressure. If I just have my gauge, I would bring it to 10 pounds of pressure. Now this is because I'm at sea level, so I know that this is the pressure. If you're not at sea level, or if you don't know what level you're at, be sure to check that out, because whatever your altitude is has an impact on your processing time. So once we get to the appropriate pressure for the altitude, then that's when we start timing. So for my 500 milliliter jars, or my pint-sized jars, we will need to boil this, process this for 55 minutes. So now let's get this going. The buttons come up, we've got a lot of pressure coming out, so now we vent our pot for 10 minutes. So the pot has vented for 10 minutes. Now we're going to put the weighted gauge on it, and start building the pressure. And I can stop screaming now. As you can see, I'm reaching 11 pounds of pressure and the gauge has started to rock back and forth. It's exactly what we're looking for. I gradually lower the heat because I don't want it to boil out of control. And now it's at 11 pounds of pressure. I can time this for 55 minutes. Always keeping my eye on my pot during this entire process. I always have to lower the heat as I'm processing. It'll sometimes take about 20 minutes to regulate the heat of my stove by bringing it down gradually so I can keep it at 11 pounds of pressure. 55 minutes are up. Just turn off the heat. If you can transfer to another element on your stove, go ahead. If not, leave it there. Don't drag it across your stove top because you don't want to damage the top of it. So you just want to lift and carry it across, but if it's too heavy, leave it there. So now, all we have to do is wait. So this needs to sit here. It can take somewhere around 30 minutes. So we need to wait for the dial to go back down to 0, the button to drop, and then we remove this, wait 10 minutes, remove the cover, let it sit for 10 minutes before removing your jars. Every step is really important, so don't try to cut the steps. We're almost done. It's early in the morning, getting ready to go to work, but I just had to show you my corn again before I left. So I've gotten all my jars, they've sealed nicely. Be sure to always check your seals before storing your jars to make sure that they've sealed properly. As usual, always remove the rings from your jars, never store them with the rings on top. Give your bottles a good wipe down before you put them away. You don't have to be gentle with them, they won't unseal, so make sure that you wash them a little bit before you put them away. Store them in a cool, dry, dark area, and they'll keep for up to a year, even more in those conditions. Make sure to write down the date or at least the year that you've canned your product. It's pretty clear that it's corn, but I mean, you can always write corn and write the year down just to make sure that you remember. You sometimes forget. Like I say, the first year I made corn, I had like 40 bottles of corn, so they lasted a long time. So make sure that you write the year down on top of your jars. Also remember that when you pull your jars out of the canner, you gotta let them sit for 24 hours. You can't touch them, you gotta let them settle. Just like my vegetable soup over there that I finished in the evening last night. They're over there settling because it hasn't been 24 hours yet. So if you like my channel, don't be shy, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll be notified when I put out new content, and be sure to check back again soon. As usual, always remove We're going to be putting our weighted gauge, which mine is absent, on top of the pot. So apparently when I was... Are you going to compete with me, Luna?